Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. I'm Sophia, your host. Over the last year or so, we've been looking at some of the most misunderstood Quranic verses. Today, we want to step back and look at lessons learned. With me is Dr. Shabir Ally. Dr. Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Pleasure to be on.
We've looked at, Dr. Shabir, at over 100 verses of the Quran which are misunderstood, verses that are often quoted, misquoted, debated, and even weaponized, Dr. Shabir, sometimes. Why do you think that these verses have been so misunderstood, Dr. Shabir?
Misunderstandings, I think, stem from, let's say, two main directions. One direction we have looked at, as you recall, Sophia, is the direction of outside critics of Islam, especially missionaries for another faith. They look at the Quran and they say, oh, it must be wrong in this verse because it's different from our scripture. And their misunderstandings are manifested when we look at the grammatical composition of the verses that they're alluding to and so on. That's one issue. But another is just simply sometimes a desire to denigrate the religion of Islam. Now, misunderstandings also stem from within.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other direction, where Muslims, sincerely wanting to please God by explicating His book, they bring their own baggage to the enterprise of Quranic interpretation. So if there are certain overarching ideologies that have become very commonplace among Muslims, then they will bring that to bear on the verses. We've seen several examples where throughout the Quran, those who subscribe to a stark predetermination theory try to bend the Quranic verses to fit within that theory. And often we've seen how they do not fit. Actually, the Quran shows that human beings have limited freedom. It's limited, to be sure. God is overarching in control, but nonetheless, He has given human beings some limited freedom. And based on that freedom, they are going to be questioned about their actions.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the baggage is not ideological so much, but it's cultural. Where Muslims understanding certain things from their cultural and environments to be so true that they could not imagine the Quran saying something different from what they know to be true. And so they interpret the Quran in the light of what they know to be true, which from our perspective not only seems wrong, but it seems to not fit a proper grammatical analysis of the Quran, what we call the grammatico-historical analysis. So a case in point would be, for example, the verses dealing with the treatment of women and the status of women in Muslim societies. We've seen that many such verses have been misunderstood, misapplied, misexplicated, if I can coin a new term here. That's one of the reasons why people have misunderstood and misexplained the Quran.
Dr. Shabir, you've been studying the Quran for many years, reading it from cover to cover. I'm wondering if there were any new insights that you developed as you went through this series, this Misunderstood Quranic Verses series, because it's probably the first time you went through it step by step, looked at each page, tried to seek out the most misunderstood verses, and then discussed it on this show. So I'm wondering if anything leapt out at you, or if you had any sort of new insight or revelation. Not Quranic revelation, but just an aha moment.
Yeah. I have to confess that because I've been studying it so long, I mean, as you know, my PhD dissertation was in the field of exegesis, Quranic exegesis, as it is called in academia, basically tafsir, to use the Arabic word. So because I've been steeped in it so long, the aha moments already came a long time ago. And in a way, many of those aha moments were translated into the series because verses that I've looked at in the past and I've come to realize, wait a minute, what is there in the classical tafsirs do not properly represent the Quran. So all of those were in a way stored up in my mind. And this series gave me the opportunity to actually share that with the public in a manner in which I haven't done before. I've done little bits and pieces in sermons and lectures and so on, but systematically to go through it, this was, I think, the first time that I've done that. So I've relieved myself of a lot of stored information, which, I often wonder, I've having studied so long for so many years and stored up this valuable information, valuable in my own mind, then, do I not have the obligation to share that with the public, or at least leave it as a legacy? And I'm glad that we have actually reached that stage and we've been able to do it.
Me too. I guess the next step, Dr. Shabir, is to put it all into a book form so people can access it easily.
Yes, of course. And taking it further, I mean, we've done something like 108 various verses of the Quran that we have expounded upon. This is not exhaustive.
Yes.
And on the one hand...
Can you tell us why you picked those verses? Because I'm sure there were other misunderstood verses as well. Was there a reason why you selected the ones that you did?
Yes. In looking at the ones to present, I have to think about what are we going to present to a public audience, and what is going to be absorbable, especially given the medium through which we are presenting this. Naturally, if I was writing a book from scratch, I would be writing for academia, perhaps, or people, of a certain level of interest in this sort of study, and so that's different than speaking with a popular audience. And then putting something in writing from the inception is different than the way we started by presenting it verbally, and then trying to compile it into a book. So I have to keep all of these things in mind. When we speak to a television audience, we're advised to keep things less complicated. Mm-hmm. So the medium is the message, as you know, right? So if I were doing it differently, maybe there are other verses that I would have picked as well. And that could be like a further development from our present series.
Dr. Shabir, what's your advice for somebody approaching the Quran, having perhaps watched parts of the Misunderstood Quranic Verses series? How should they read the Quran with reverence, but also with a critical eye towards possible interpretations that exist out there?
Yeah. So one of the things to watch for is that classical interpretations of the Quran, which are basically in the Arabic language, they have tried to maintain a disciplined type, approach to explicating the Quran. They wanted to avoid using one's hawa or desire in interpreting, because people can make the Quran mean whatever they like it to mean if we just allow our desires to run loose. And I think that it is important for us, while recognizing some of the mistakes of the past, to hold on to this very valuable principle that we're not going to try to interpret the Quran according to what we wish it to mean, mm-hmm. but we're going to try to be honest with what the text actually says. Now, of course, after we know what it says, we're going to think about how to apply it in our modern societies, and sometimes it may not actually fit, and we may need to think about what we're going to do with the fact that the Quran says one thing and we want to see something else. But we should be sure and honest about what we're doing. Like, we shouldn't pretend that we're applying the Quran when in fact we're not. And if we're not applying the Quran, we should have a good reason why we're not applying it. Maybe we'll explain that by saying, okay, this was very fitting for the time in which it was revealed, but maybe it wasn't intended for our modern times, and then we must give good rationale and so on. One of the mistakes to watch for in classical Islamic interpretations is the use of what we call Isra'iliyat. We've seen many examples of this where the stories from the biblical tradition or extra-biblical tradition were used to explicate verses of the Quran, and sometimes they turn the stories way out of whack from what was obviously intended in the Quranic narrative. Now, for those in the English-speaking world, there are good materials available. Some of the classical tafsirs are being translated, that of Ibn Kathir, for example, in 10 volumes. So that will give you some insight into what a classical tafsir looked like. But also there are good modern interpretations, though they remain mostly in smaller packages, like, for example, that by Muhammad Asad, The Message of the Quran. So we should avail ourselves of a wide variety of translations, because one translation may capture one shade of meaning, another may capture a different shade. We'll try to put them all together in our own minds and form a holistic understanding of what the verse is speaking about, and so on. For those who have limited time, obviously, you pick one translation and go with it. Those who can do more study will use a variety, go deeper into the exegesis, and so on.
All right. Thank you for that, Dr. Shabir. It was a wonderful series, and I appreciate that we did it together.
I thank God that He has given us the opportunity to bring this to fruition.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Muslim Media Hub, the new home of Let the Quran Speak.
Here we spread positivity and good. We help people experience the beauty of Islam and help them appreciate and understand Muslims.
This beautiful building we purchased at cost $2.3 million.
Yeah, we've already raised a third of that money, and with your help, inshallah, we can pay off the rest.
So we're looking for people who can give $1,000 each. If you can be part of the select group, that's amazing.
Otherwise, just please give whatever you can. Every dollar counts.
It's our collective responsibility to share the message of Islam with our fellow human beings. Please help us continue this good work.
It's a sadaqah jariyah, something that will continue to be a benefit to the Muslim community long after Safiya and I are gone.
Please support our work at muslimmediahub.com.
Your support is zakat eligible and tax deductible.
May Allah bless you and your loved ones today and always. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.